All right, perfect. So, welcome to this webinar of of Diversion CI with Unreal. My name is Omer. I'm the community manager, and I want to start off with a subject that's very important to me. What will we actually be talking about today? Just to really straighten everything out. So, this webinar is definitely not about the CI/CD process, which is a lot of things. There's a lot of technical knowledge in order to accomplish it properly. There's you can argue whether there's you need some philosophical understanding across your whole team for it to work properly. So this is not, it ties into agile methodology and how you structure your branches, and you really need to have automated testing for it to work and understand dark releases. And if one of these things, if you're missing any one of these things, right, you won't be able to do CI/CD properly. You wouldn't be able to get the benefits from the CI/CD process. And there's just a lot. So definitely beyond the scope of this webinar. CI/CD can also affect your organizational structure. And this is not meant to be a comprehensive guide to all of the best practices regarding Unreal or CI in particular, or CI/CD in general. What this will be is how to set up an automation pipeline with Diversion, which unfortunately a lot of people confuse the CI with automation pipeline, right? Automation pipeline is a part of your CI/CD process. Something hopefully you'll be able to adapt to any specific use case. And I'll be showing off our community plugin. We actually have a community Jenkins plugin developed by our great friends at Super Studios, who are using Diversion with Jenkins as part of their day-to-day process. And they created a plugin that's out on the Jenkins marketplace, and we'll be using it today. So what's the setup I'll be running for this demonstration? Of course, we'll be using Diversion. We'll be using Unreal. Right now, 5.7 is the demo I have set up. Of course, Jenkins, as I said. This Jenkins setup runs locally. So this isn't, my Docker in AWS. Is just a local Jenkins setup for this demonstration. On the same machine, my laptop, which you might hear screaming in the background, there is, of course, Diversion installed and the relevant Unreal version installed as well. So what does our process look like, or what you could say every automation pipeline generally looks like for releasing versions? So we're going to start with some sort of trigger. Something needs to trigger the pipeline. We will be using the Diversion webhook triggers. Then you need to authenticate. So the pipeline needs to get access to your repository. Need to get a specific version of our repository. We'll just get the latest one. And then you got to create a deployable package. So something that needs to get into people's hands. And we want to do that automatically. Of course, there could be a lot more to it depending on your process, depending on your workflow. You might want to tag your builds and tag your version control differently depending on which kind of build is it, depending on what exactly you are doing. And let's see what that looks like. So let's bring my face back here. And here we go again with the screen. Great. So this is the Unreal 5.7 third-person template that I have set up with Diversion. So I have the plugin enabled, downloaded and enabled inside the project. And the project is a Diversion repository called Diversion CI. And this is the project we will be working with. Excuse me. And the Diversion repository looks like this. Here it is, which is just a couple of commits deep. right? The initial template, and adding my build script. So the script that we are going to use, this is the specific setup to use, the specific simplest setup to use the Diversion plugin. If you want to do things a bit more manually, you can be a lot more sophisticated with it, or you don't necessarily need to have everything set up this way, but if you are using the plugin, then you do. What I have here is in the scripts folder, I have a file called buildpackage.groovy. The Jenkins Diversion plugin uses Groovy files, and the names should make sense. You'll see in a second. So this is the build package Groovy file. Let's open it in VS Code, which should be a bit more convenient. So the Groovy file, the Groovy scripting, looks like a Jenkins file, or rather this one looks like a Jenkins file, right? Any agent, the environment setup I have, I'm using the Diversion CI repository, and a specific workspace. All right, so let's hop back into the app. The specific workspace I have, I just created using this new workspace button and gave it a name. I created the CI workspace, which is the designated workspace that I intend to use for the CI process. So it's not a workspace that anyone will work on. It is just for the build machine to have. This way it can keep getting, if the machine is up and running, you wouldn't have to reclone a project from scratch at all. You also wouldn't have any latency when you're starting a new build process, because if the machine is up and running, then it would using the sync mechanism would just continue getting updates. So there wouldn't be any need to like time out builds, or it would be to a lesser effect. So you wouldn't have to wait as much when starting your builds. And to get this workspace's ID, which I need for the script, right click, copy workspace ID, and I just get it and I put it right here in the script. And we're gonna do exactly what it said in the nice slide with all the arrows. We're gonna start with authenticating ourselves. So we're gonna get access to the repo, right? I'm gonna use the DV token variable. I'll show you how I set it up in the Jenkins installation. I'm gonna use the authenticate CLI command, which authenticates you using a token. The way to get this token, by the way, is if you go through the app, you can go into integrations, and it's going to take you to the web, and you can generate new API token. I won't hit this now because then it's going to invalidate the other one I have. Then I'm going to have to do some live setup, but yeah, you get your token from here. Of course, not retrievable after the first time you generate it. So I'm going to authenticate using the token. Then I'm going to ask if I need to know whether or not I should clone my my repo, because maybe it's already cloned and it lives inside the in our case the Jenkins workspace, and I'm looking for the .diversion folder. So if you look at any diversion repo, let's take a look. You are going to have, here it is, the .diversion hidden folder, which holds all of the diversion configuration files. Shouldn't be bigger than a couple of Ks, unlike the .git folder. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for this folder, and if it already exists, then I have already cloned the repo. If it doesn't exist, then I want to clone the repo from the specific workspace. And after I do that, I run a build command. Right now, since this is an installed engine on the machine, just the default install path, run UAT, and I build cook run as simple as can be. You can have your own script file here. You can use, if you have a source build of the engine, and of course this would look different, right? You would probably still run UAT or any build graph, just not from the default installation. Of course, you can also use this to run any kind of Unreal Engine automation. If you have C# scripts from the automation projects, you could do that from here as well. And that's just going to build our project. What does the Jenkins side of the setup look like? So let's hop over into Jenkins. Right now, well, we don't have any kind of pipelines set up yet. So what I did is under credentials, we have the DV token, which is a secret text, and that's its name, it's DV token. And under system, I have the user pool client ID configured, and you can find this in our documentation. This is not something you have to quickly, type out. We just need to define this as an environment variable, and you can, as I said, find this value in our documentation. And seeing as we're all set up, let's create our pipeline. So I'm going to create a new pipeline item, because we will be able to have a pipeline, and I'm going to call it build package, which is the name of the script that the Groovy script that I wrote. This is because I'm using the community plugin, and as of now that's required. So I'm going to say OK. And to set up, first of all, well, we said we would be triggering the build using our webhook triggers. So to do that, I will enable the generic webhook trigger, which I got from another plugin. And that's going to expose a URL that I could send HTTP requests to in order to trigger this build. And let's add a token to it with a very meaningful name. So the my token will go to this build. And what actually happens, the pipeline, what I want the pipeline to do is, I don't want a pipeline script and to type it out here like an animal. I want to use a pipeline script from a source control management. And the SCM I want to use is Diversion. This, of course, is only available thanks to the plugin. The credentials I want to use is DV token credentials that I've configured. Once I select my credentials, the repository list gets filled up with all of the repositories that I have, and we want the Diversion CI one. And the branch is the main branch. And the script path, right now the optional script path I want to leave as pipeline scripts. And the script path here, I want it to be scripts build package .groovy, which is the name of the script file in the repository and also the name of the pipeline. And this should be it. So I'm going to save. And let's just see that it works. Here is my Jenkins workspace folder, which is currently empty because I don't have any workspaces. And when I run the pipeline, it's going to think hard for a couple of seconds. Now it's going to start running. And what you can see is, okay, I have the build package folder created here. And if we look inside the console output, we can see that we are cloning, right? Because there was no repo there earlier, but now the repo is there and it is being cloned as we speak. We can see it right over here. And when it finishes, then it's going to start building the project. And there you go. And it's running the build. Then it's gonna cook, and it's gonna package. It's gonna do all the great stuff. While it's thinking, I have to entertain you while we're having a first-time build on screen, which could take a couple of minutes. Let's set up the last piece of the puzzle, our webhook trigger. So to do that, I'm gonna go into the Diversion app, And the webhook triggers are under your organization. So under your organizations, you can go into webhooks, and you need to select your repository, which for us would be the Diversion CI repository. And I want to add a webhook for this repository. So let's call it, this is not mandatory, but I will call it build package just because that's what I called everything else. And the payload URL, so where I want this to go, since I'm running it locally, I'm going to have to use this one. Great, right? The SME.io. This is the URL where my Jenkins is currently. And of course, passing my token, the my token variable, the parameter over here. And I want this to be triggered when a commit is created. So whenever a commit is created, this is going to fire. You can of course do it, when a review is created or merged. You may not want to fire this for every commit, or you may want to treat different commits differently. For example, if I'm committing to the main branch or to the dev branch, you might want to do different things. So you can do that using the payloads that come with the different webhook events. So if we go back here, okay, you can already see that our build has succeeded. If I go into the diversion docs and go to webhooks, where they go? There you go. So you have the different payloads, right? So they will all have this, but you can always parse the payload that you get. And for example, I can see which branch I'm at. You can use the branch ID or anything. So you have a lot of flexibility, and you can get extremely sophisticated and creative with what you do. You have all of the information that you need. And okay, so what we said was that the automation tool has finished running. The build is over. Now what we have inside our Jenkins workspace, the Diversion CI repository, the clone of it here, it's just an Unreal project. It's the clone of our project. And under the saved direction, staged builds, I have the built and packaged. Right now this would be a development build for Windows. That's just because of the way I set up the build command. You can of course do whatever you want, archive it to any other place. So we know that this works. We know that the webhook is set up. So let's create a new commit. So I'm now inside the main clone of the repository. So not the CI clone. Let's create a new text document, right? Not gonna be a very meaningful gameplay logic. Is just not the point of this webinar. So I created a new file, and in the Diversion client, I can see it right over here. It was added, and I'm going to say adding text document. And what we want is when I hit commit, right, when I hit this commit button over here, we want the pipeline to start going. So let's take a look over here. Right now we have run number 1, and I'm going to say commit. And if I did everything correctly live and everything, in just a second, or maybe I didn't do everything correctly, and that would be a shame. Let's see, so I got this one here. Oh, the dreaded tech issues live. Dreaded tech issues live. Did I set the webhook up correctly? Your diversion CI. Did I not hit save? Let's do that again. Right, and add webhook. Great, now it's created. This makes a lot more sense. All right, let's make a modification to our text document. And back in the Diversion CI repo. All right, I see my change. Okay, commit. And there you go. Yeah, you need to hit the save button, otherwise it doesn't save. That's what you can do. And the build has been triggered just from the webhook. So this is how you would take your project through webhooks, through the Diversion's Jenkins plugin, and create a shippable build product.